The Australian Grand Prix weekend began without Alain Prost. He was fired by Ferrari and didn't appear in Adelaide. Another three-time world champion was also the subject of great speculation. Would this be Nelson Piquet's last Grand Prix? The stars were out for the event, including supermodel Ellie Macpherson and singer Paul Simon. But by Sunday, the rain had come as well, lots of it, causing the race to be stopped after only 14 laps, the shortest Grand Prix in history. A full report on the last race of the 1991 calendar coming up on the official story of the FIA Formula One World Championship, Inside Track. It's the capital of South Australia. It's also a bustling centre of commerce and government. But with a population of under 1 million people, it maintains a certain intimacy usually associated with smaller towns. For the past 7 years, Adelaide has played host to the world during the Australian Grand Prix and done it with the entire community contributing to the outstanding success and popularity of the weekend. They call it the ultimate event, and for good reason. No show on earth combines excitement, glamour and visual thrill like Grand Prix racing, and the Australians have come to appreciate that. The Adelaide street circuit is widely accepted as the best of its kind in the world. Race commentator Tony Jardine takes us round a lap of the track with Ayrton Senna.
Ayrton Senna, the new world champion in his McLaren, a master at Adelaide, but he's never won here before. Going along with him on the lap up to the first chicane. Note those big curbs on the inside and the outside. They look relatively flat, but they're not. They're quite dangerous. Look at the shake inside the cockpit as well. A tremendously difficult job for the drivers here in Adelaide. Concrete walls lining the edge of the track. The surface looks smooth, but it's not. It's low grip. Look at the way Ayrton Senna's having to work in the cockpit now. As he heads towards East Terrace and towards Stag Bend, you can see the pubs and clubs on the left. Here's Stag, infamous corner up on those big curves, which can launch the car perilously towards those unyielding concrete walls. Senna now up into 6th gear. He's gone along the Jones Straight, along the Brabham Straight, flat out now. Tremendous speed, nearly 200 miles per hour. And down at the bottom, it's from 6th down into 2nd gear, a very tight hairpin right-hander, and then a flowing left. But look at those curbs, look at the traps there. And Senna, accurate as ever, despite the bumps and the shaking about that he receives inside the McLaren. The last corner back onto the pit straight, a vital one, and you can see how close the wall and the marshals there are as Senna completes a lap in the McLaren Honda.
The newly crowned world champion promised the fans a good race in the season's finale. One thing about Ayrton Senna, he's always given 100% throughout his 8-year Formula One career. It all began on home ground, Jacarapagua, Brazil, in April 1984. A proven winner in Formula Ford and Formula 3, he was given his chance by the Tolman team that's now evolved into Benetton, and he's never looked back. His precocious talent was obvious. In the driving rain of Monaco in June '84, he chased the McLaren of Alain Prost home, looking certain to sweep past and into the lead until the race was stopped. A good third-place finish at Brands in July was followed by disappointment at Hockenheim. The collapse of the rear wing of the Tolman almost bringing disaster. Senna emerged unscathed. Contracted by Lotus for the 1985 season, Senna claimed the first of his 60 career pole positions at Estoril, again demonstrating his supreme ability in wet conditions. A memorable first victory and celebration. Senna is always competitive, and that's on the track and even on the podium. Senna first, ahead of the Ferrari of Michele Alboreto, with the Renault of Patrick Tambay third. It was a performance that underlined his potential as a future world champion. Fourth in the championship in '85 and '86. In '87 he improved to third, second place in Japan, ensuring he finished ahead of Prost in the title race for the first time. In the close season, he moved to the team of all the talents, and 1988 was to see him alongside Prost in the McLaren Honda Turbo. At San Marino in May, he qualified on pole, then he led from flag to flag, all 60 laps, a stunning victory, with his new teammates second, just the two McLarens on the lead lap at the finish. In Montreal, Prost held the lead till lap 18, then hesitated behind a back marker and Senna pounced. Detroit next, and Senna led for all 63 laps, even whilst in the pits, thanks to one of those typically slick McLaren tyre changes. Silverstone, dreadful weather on race day, Senna revelling in the conditions as Prost found his McLaren unmanageable. It was damp too at Hockenheim. Senna cruised to his 5th win of the season, Prost second. Prost still led the championship by 3 points from Senna with 7 rounds to go.
Is it possible to be equal in the championship?
No.
Shit.
Can only be one winner.
Formula One's 3rd visit to Hungary produced a tremendous battle. Prost squeezing past on lap 49. But then, just 30 yards further on, Senna through the gap and first again. Spa, late August. Senna passed Prost on the opening lap. Prost afterwards conceding that the title was lost, though only 5 points separated them with 2 Grand Prix left. At Suzuka, Senna stalled on the grid. But he managed to get bump started. He was 14th at the first corner, 8th by the end of lap 1, then he caught and passed Prost on lap 27. An incredible drive to his 8th victory of the season and his first World Championship. An ecstatic Senna on the podium, ambition achieved. But less than a year later, the relationship between teammates had deteriorated. Senna defending his title, Prost anxious to regain it. Arguments still rage over who did what and to whom at Suzuka. With Prost stranded, Senna was determined to resume. He encouraged the marshals to push start him and then to clear a path through back to the track. He then had to make his way round to the pits. After attention, he crossed the line first, only to be disqualified for missing out the chicane on this infamous lap. That meant that Prost was proclaimed world champion, and although McLaren protested against the decision, it was all to no avail. Prost in charge, and a 6-month suspended ban hung over Senna. His last chance of winning back-to-back world championships disappeared in the Adelaide rain. Lap 14, blinded by spray, he ran into the rear of Martin Brundle's Brabham, and the championship runner-up three-wheeled back to the pits. Last March, after a winter of discontent and controversy, Ayrton Senna's appetite for competition was revived. Around the streets of Phoenix, the precocious talent of Jean Alesi in the Tyrrell stole the show. Senna declared himself impressed. To many, Alesi was a reminder of Senna in 1984. It finished Senna first and Alesi second, but Senna knew he had a battle on. At Imola, Senna led for just 3 laps before he pulled over and out, the right rear tyre flat, and that made handling absolutely impossible. Spain in September, Senna had an 18-point lead in the championship and pole position, his 50th, but again retirement due to a hold radiator. So Prost closed to within 9 points as the scene shifted back to Suzuka. The championship was decided in the first 15 seconds after the green light. Senna on pole, but on the bad side of the track. Prost accelerated down the clean side. Senna challenged. It was an open and shut case. The championship settled as the dust cloud cleared, Senna claiming the title for the 2nd time. So yet another close season with arguments rife. But Senna felt that justice had been served. He clinched his 3rd title under much clearer circumstances in 1991 at Suzuka. After his nearest rival Nigel Mansell had spun out, the championship was secure. And then, in a noble gesture, Senna let teammate Gerhard Berger through to win the race. So heading into Adelaide, Senna wasn't under any pressure in a fight for the championship, but he was motivated nonetheless.
I particularly wanted to win this race very much because it's one of the few races I haven't won in my career, the Grand Prix of Australia. And therefore it's still a lot of pressure, but with the championship being over, it's a nice way of looking at a weekend of work.
And still to come on Inside Track, Gianni Morbidelli replaces Alain Prost at Ferrari. We discover why. Williams test their new reactive suspension. And Adelaide comes alive for the Grand Prix. Street parties galore. That's all coming up here on Screen Sport on Inside Track.
A winner in any engine, in any...
Adelaide has made a mark in Grand Prix history. In 6 Formula One races since 1985, the city has compiled a list of firsts, lasts and most spectaculars. Being the final race of the season, the Adelaide event has seen the swan song appearances of names such as Niki Lauda and Keke Rosberg. The 1985 event was won by Rosberg in a Williams Honda, and this despite 3 stops for tyres. Alain Prost had already clinched the first of his 3 world titles. In 1986, Prost, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet all found themselves in with a chance to claim the World Championship. Prost could only retain the title if he won, and Mansell finished lower than 3rd. Rosberg, driving in his final Formula One race, had set the pace from the start, but stopped with a disintegrated right rear tyre. Mansell was on course for the World Championship when in a spectacular few seconds, now part of Formula One folklore, his left rear tyre exploded. Somehow he managed to keep the car under control long enough to bring it to a halt, but Mansell's world title hopes had vanished in one of the most famous moments in sporting history. Teammate Nelson Piquet stopped for new tyres. That allowed Prost to take the lead and stay there to win his 2nd consecutive world title. The following year, Nelson Piquet had already clinched the World Championship by the time he reached Adelaide. He battled with pole position holder Gerhard Berger, beat the Austrian into the first turn, but soon found himself trailing Berger before the end of the first lap. A rare hat-trick for Berger, pole position, fastest lap, and eventually the win. Prost spun, ending his chances of a podium finish. Berger's win was the first time in over 2 years that Ferrari had won a Grand Prix. With Senna later disqualified for illegal brake ducts, Alboreto was promoted to 2nd. That made it a Ferrari 1-2 finish. But the big winner on the day was Nelson Piquet, who paraded around the circuit after the race as the new world champion. In 1988, Senna had clinched the world title before Formula One reached Adelaide, so the race promised to be an all-out battle for victory. No need to drive conservatively to protect point-scoring positions. Alain Prost had pole position and took the early lead, his teammate Ayrton Senna 2nd. As Prost pulled away, Senna diced with Berger in the Ferrari, the Austrian squeezing by the newly crowned world champion. Later in the race, Berger tried a similar move at the same corner, but with a different result. René Arnoux in the Ligier takes him out. Nigel Mansell found himself just over the limit on this corner, spinning out into the tyre barrier and eventually out of the race. So despite both McLarens having handling and gearbox problems, they finished 1-2 in the final race of the turbo era. In 1989, torrential rain had the drivers questioning their participation in the race. Alain Prost, in fact, didn't want to race at all. The rain-soaked event went for 2 laps before it had to be stopped. When it was eventually restarted, Senna took the lead, the best place to be, as the rest of the field could see little through the rooster tails of spray thrown up by the cars in front. This shot from the onboard camera on Derek Warwick's Arrows illustrates the difficulties of seeing, let alone driving in such conditions. With the cars aquaplaning badly, it was a testament to the skills of drivers like Mansell and Senna that they stayed on the road at all. Cars spun and crashed out, eventually including Senna, as as we see from the onboard camera in the back of the Brabham. Boutsen demonstrated his expertise by winning the race, finishing ahead of Alessandro Nannini in the Benetton. The race was eventually stopped after 2 hours, the maximum allowed. In 1990, the conditions were considerably better. It was difficult at times, though, to keep focused. As Ayrton Senna discovered, his concentration wavered, into the wall he went. Meanwhile, Nigel Mansell charged past teammate Alain Prost and into second place. Leading the race was Nelson Piquet in the Benetton, but he nearly lost it here as his tyres began to wear out. Mansell tried to line up Piquet, but braked too late and shot past the Brazilian. So Nelson Piquet went on to win the 1990 Australian Grand Prix, his second consecutive win to end the season. But as Nelson Piquet entered the Australian Grand Prix only a year later, there was a strong possibility that Adelaide would be the final Formula One race of his career.
Can you tell us what you're going to be doing next year?
No.
Let's put it this way. Are you going to be in Formula One next year?
I don't know.
Okay, this is getting harder.
Do you want to be in Formula One next year?
I don't know.
Benetton had already signed Michael Schumacher and Martin Brundle for 1992, leaving the three-time world champion out in the cold.
Look, I'm trying to, for the last 2 months, tell you, I said it, when I have everything signed, I will tell you something. Before that, forget, you can guess anything you want to guess, but don't make no difference. I will not tell you what I'm going on, or what's going on.
What we'd like to find out is that you're not giving up. You're not saying, okay, I've had enough of this. You're going to keep...
No. If I can make a deal in a competitive car next year, I will be driving for sure. I would like to drive, and I enjoy to drive, and I don't want to bring drive for the 10th place. That's the problem.
Another three-time world champion in the news, Alain Prost. He didn't even make it to Adelaide. He'd been fired by Ferrari for continually criticising the team and its organisation in public. Although Ferrari could have kept Prost for the final race of the season, they had to be seen to be bigger than the driver, hence the decision.
We are upset because we've lost as Ferrari one of the best driver and the best test driver of the Formula One. The reason was the behavior of Alain Prost was not at the level that Ferrari would like for his top driver.
Alain Prost's former McLaren teammate Niki Lauda was in Adelaide as one of the sponsors of the event through his airline Lauda Air. Asked to comment on the Prost affair, Lauda put the blame squarely on the Frenchman's shoulders.
Well, first of all, you have to find the reason why it all happened. And the reason is simply that Alain, when everything is going well, he can develop all his power to drive and everything is good. But as soon as things turn against him, he turns against the team, which is wrong. Even in difficult times, you have to stick with the team and solve your problem internally. He then goes to the media, he tells the media about the problem he has internally. So he put himself into a huge mess. And I think from Ferrari point of view, they were right to say, let's stop all that and let's get on with somebody else. So I think really he was the man who started it all. And now he's in a situation where he has to reorganize all his life because there's no good car available now for next season because everybody's signed up. But maybe we'll stop for 1 year and then get his act together and do it again. It's a pity from my point of view because Prost, as a driver, he's brilliant. There's no question. He's one of the top 3 men in Grand Prix racing. But all the blah blah and the politics around, he's not good on that, and that's the reason he's out.
Prost's replacement in Adelaide was Gianni Morbidelli, no stranger to Ferrari. He'd spent considerable time as their test driver and was familiar with their semi-automatic gearbox. Morbidelli was replaced at Minardi by Brazilian Roberto Moreno. He'd been called in at the last minute, was happy to accept the drive, but he was looking for something more permanent in 1992. Bertrand Gachot was back in a Formula One car for the first time since the Hungarian Grand Prix. He replaced Eric Bernard, who broke his leg in practice at the Japanese race. Speculation was also rife about the future of one of Formula One's oldest teams, Tyrrell. They'd entered the season as one of the teams to watch out for, but a combination of factors, including the loss of key personnel, meant that they never reached their full potential. Honda will not be supplying them with engines for next year. Satoru Nakajima has retired. Stefano Modena has not had the option on his contract renewed, and some major sponsors will not be back with the team for 1992. There are reports in the press that Team Tyrrell is up for sale. The asking price, $9 million. Formula One newcomers Modena seem to be in dire financial straits. They can no longer afford the supply of Lamborghini engines, and without the facilities to develop a new chassis, it seems as though Adelaide could be their final race. Brabham will be back next year, albeit with a completely new look. Modena driver Eric van der Poel and Japanese Formula 3000 star Naoki Hattori will replace Martin Brundle, who signed with Benetton, and Mark Blundell, who's lost out as financial considerations play a key part in driver selection.
I think it's getting a bit too, far down the line now that the drivers have to come in with so much money. It's just, it's impossible nearly, especially in England. We can't do it. I know we can't do it. It's a lot of money to find, but I think we should somehow try and get back to taking the drivers on merit and ability and, getting back to, I don't know, maybe the old days or something like that.
At Adelaide's 4-day-long Streets Ahead festival, pre-qualifying takes place on the Thursday and at a civilised hour for a change. Brabham, Footwork, Coloni and Fond Metal are the teams involved. Martin Brundle, on his last appearance for Brabham before moving on, was again the pick of the small field. He clocked 1 minute 17.707, and that's an average of around 110 miles an hour. The Italian Alex Caffi in footwork number 10 progressed through for the second race running. Mark Blundell, Brundle's partner, had failed to pre-qualify in Japan, and with no drive for next year on offer, he couldn't afford mistakes this time. He made it. Quicker even than the most experienced driver in pre-qualifying. Michele Alboreto in the other footwork Ford, a rare highlight for Alboreto in an inconsistent season. He was aiming for his 153rd Grand Prix appearance. Not so lucky, Gabriele Tarquini in the only Fond Metal. Successful in Spain and Japan, left rear suspension failure here meant a high-speed offline excursion. Tarquini was okay, but he was out of the race and pre-qualifying subsequently delayed. Tarquini, the left rear suspension giving up and the driver helpless, out of control, and as the car cannoned into the wall, close of business for Fond Metal in Australia. Various cars in difficulty on a dusty track. Naoki Hattori in the Coloni, still learning, he didn't pre-qualify. On to Friday and the first close look at the circuit for most of the drivers for a year. Alessandro Zanardi in the Jordan, shortcuts, not always the quickest. He damaged the front end, the suspension was clattered too, and he limped back with a plausible explanation for Eddie Jordan. Carl Wendlinger, Leighton House, 23 years old, the Austrian at his second Grand Prix, invaluable experience. And it wasn't just the youngsters who strayed into trouble. Nigel Mansell's world goes round and round, and he likes Adelaide. First qualifying Friday afternoon. Michael Schumacher, Benetton number 19, he set the first decent time. He'd never been on the circuit before. He was looking good for the 6th Grand Prix running. Stefano Modena, Tyrrell number 4, working well. That promised a good showing in the race. Tyrrell needed it after a poor second half of the season. Nelson Piquet, Benetton number 20, his future in doubt, but third fastest at this stage in what could be the last Grand Prix for the 39-year-old three-time world champion. Gianni Morbidelli, the 23-year-old Italian Formula 3 champion from 2 years ago, replacing Prost in the Ferrari, not quite getting to grips with Adelaide. Aguri Suzuki and the LaRousse at the chicane, just one of several embarrassing moments, but this is an expensive one too. Suzuki okay, but the time lost in rebuilding resulted in non-qualification. Another session delayed. Suzuki, the top Japanese driver in Formula 1 next season, with the retirement of Nakajima, This typical of his luck, not finished a race since the opener in Phoenix. On the resumption, the brilliant Ayrton Senna in the McLaren shows how it's done as he tracks Adelaide. In 6 previous races at the circuit, he'd claimed pole 4 times, but he'd never gone on to win the race. He was determined to change that record. Around the city streets, down the Brabham Straight, concentration is vital.
You know, after you win a championship, automatically you lose a little bit your concentration because you keep holding on the whole year, and once you achieve your goal, which is the championship, automatically everything goes down. And I was a little bit struggling this morning to bring the concentration to the level that is required and put myself on the real push mood, and even in qualifying it was very difficult for me, but I think I'm getting there again, back there to the normal, and it's very tough, you know, because Gerhard is driving very well, the cars are similar, Williams is also in a similar level, so it's very difficult to maintain the level required to beat everybody else.
Berger won in Adelaide in 1987 for Ferrari. Fresh from victory in Japan, courtesy of Senna this year, he's back playing the number 2 as the team aimed for the Constructors' title for the 4th successive year. Mansell in the familiar Williams Red 5. One of his cars, though, with the brand new reactive suspension system, an interesting development on this testing circuit. Williams 6, Riccardo Patrese, 3rd in the Drivers' Championship and with an important part to play in the final destination of the Constructors' title. McLaren 11 points ahead of Williams, a Williams double the ambition. JJ Leto in the Dallara, a season that started promisingly, ending in a series of mishaps, although Leto did manage to obtain, provisionally at least, a mid-grid position. The Benetton of Schumacher, aiming to regain some lost ground, but not by going over the top. He certainly had an impressive start to his career, but this brought him mixed reviews. Riccardo Patrese, balletic, less frantic than some of the spins at that point on the track. Time for a short break now. When we come back, the last chapter in the 1991 Formula One season, final qualifying and the Australian Grand Prix, next on Inside Track on Screen Sport.
A winner in any engine, in any car. Champion.
Now, part of the festivities on Grand Prix weekend includes a celebrity race. One of the most recognised entrants was supermodel Ellie McPherson. She had time to chat to old friend Nigel Mansell right after Friday qualifying.
Nigel, are you going to offer Ellie any tips for the celebrity race?
I'm in the passenger seat. I'm going around too.
We're going to make it a bicycle built for 2.
But it's not easy getting into a car for the first time. So have you got any words of advice?
Tell you what, if I look as great as that, she'll have no problem at all in any car.
That's very good, isn't it? You know it. I love it.
Singer Paul Simon, booked for an Adelaide concert on race night, shown round McLaren by Gerhard Berger, and nobody called him out.
This is my first time in an auto racing shop or environment, so yeah, I'm very impressed. Although I must say, given the skill involved, I'm really not surprised, and the amount of money that's involved, and the car manufacturers, I'm really not surprised that it's state of the art. So, but it's pretty impressive to look at it. I mean, it really is.
Drivers were still fighting for grip on Saturday. Zanardi giving the Jordan team headaches before final qualifying. Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus, lucky to escape without serious damage. And a rare sight, a McLaren Honda in trouble, Senna with an engine threatening serious heat out on the circuit. Eventually pulling to a halt at a suitable position. But typical Senna, No rush, no fuss, but he still got out quickly. Eric Comas in the Ligier, not a convincing debut season for him. Final qualifying Saturday, conditions not conducive to fast times. Stefano Modena in the Tyrrell, the first one to suffer. Australian walls are hard, severe damage to the car. Modena won a point at Suzuka, but overall a disappointing second half of the season, and Tyrrell's luck seemingly out at Adelaide. 4 years since they scored a point here. The car in bad shape, but Stefano Modena himself appeared to be fit. Jogged gently back to the pits. Jean Alesi, senior man at Ferrari now, balked by Morbidelli. Alesi, no doubt, ready to impart a few words of advice in the pits. In the very closing stages, Senna quickest with a time of 1:14, 114 miles an hour, and that was good enough for pole position, because Nigel Mansell, out with the lightest of fuel loads, couldn't improve. 1:14.8, his best time. Third quickest behind Senna and Berger, and he ended up stranded as well. Senna in charge again then at Adelaide.
I think tomorrow depending on the weather. If it's dry, it can be a very exciting race to all of us. I believe both myself and Gerhard, and the two Williams particularly, have got very balanced, very competitive equipment, and the race could turn out to be one of the most exciting in the season.
Williams spent part of the weekend testing their new reactive suspension. Needless to say, much of how it works is kept top secret. There was talk that if it worked properly, the car could be used in the race. But Nigel Mansell put those rumours to rest after just a few laps.
You've had some time to test the active suspension. Opinions?
It's different. I think there's a tremendous amount of possibilities with it. It obviously is not working, shall I say, as it should be at the present time. On saying that, it's done a lot of miles. We gave it a good appraisal down here. It was reasonably competitive, but it was slower than our normal car. And therefore, there's a lot of sort of homework we've got to do over the winter, and a lot of judgments that have got to be made over the next few tests as to whether we actually use it next year or not.
So, Senna on pole, Berger alongside him, Mansell third on the grid. Just the race to come for the teams. For the fans, party time. Adelaide-style partying makes even Monaco pale by comparison. One of the major commercial avenues, Hindley Street, is closed down and becomes the focus of much of the socialising that goes on from the Thursday through to Sunday night. As the city woke Sunday morning, the weather forecast was the worst possible. The pre-race festivities went ahead as usual, but as it got closer to the start of the Grand Prix, the weather became worse, and out came the rain gear. Suddenly, there were fears that this could be a repeat of the Australian Grand Prix of 2 years ago. Sure enough, the weather did get worse. Shower, storm, torrential rain. Ayrton Senna could only shake his head at the thought of racing in such appalling conditions. But he made the commitment. The Constructors' Championship was on the line. Gerhard Berger looked relaxed despite the daunting task ahead. Riccardo Patrese discussed the conditions with FOCA Managing Director Bernie Eccleston, while Lisa Dennis, wife of McLaren team principal Ron, looked ultra chic in her latest rain gear. Adelaide would be Nelson Piquet's 204th Grand Prix. Would it also be his last? Could Nigel Mansell end his season on a winning note? We'll find out what happens right after the break. Inside Track continues with the start of the 1991 Australian Grand Prix.
Champion, a winner in any engine, in any car. Champion.
26 drivers mentally prepared then for the wet Australian Grand Prix. Conditions almost, I would wager, worse than in 1989. Red light, pole sitter, Ayrton Senna took his 60th pole. He's got some grip somehow. Berger managing to get grip somehow as the car snakes away from him. Into second place, Nigel Mansell third. Great start from Nelson Piquet in the Benetton Ford up to fourth, and fifth place his young German teammate Michael Schumacher. Now just look at the conditions. Huge walls and plumes of spray being thrown up, but Ayrton Senna, as he's been determined to do so all weekend, trying to get away. A good lead from him at the moment, and behind Schumacher it's Alesi, Patrese down in seventh, and Morbidelli in a good eighth place. They're in the Ferrari, and that was Zanardi. Tucked up the gearbox of JJ Leto though. Look at the rain on the camera lens. Let's watch Ayrton Senna, the race master, see if he can cope with these conditions better than he did in '89 when he hit the back of Brundle's Brabham on the Brabham straight when he couldn't see a thing. Conditions are dire. Look at the gloom, look at the mist. Horrendous driving conditions for these brave Grand Prix drivers, but the Australians still want to see their Grand Prix, the last of the season. Senna down the straight. Who would want to drive down there at 190 miles per hour? Not me, not many people. These brave souls, and there is Schumacher looking down the inside of Nelson Piquet. Berger trying to collect it all together as the rear of his McLaren Honda tries to snap away, and in front of him, Ayrton Senna, the new 3 times world champion, gets away from his Austrian teammate. Reflections in the Adelaide track. That's one of the smooth parts of the track there, as Senna just puts that power on very, very carefully indeed. 700 brake horsepower under his right foot. One application too much and the car will gyrate. Round it will go and straight into the unyielding walls. Second place, Gerhard Berger, thus far in round 16, the final round of the FIA Formula One World Championship 1991. And this is a tester, a final real horrendous test, and the rear end of the McLaren tries to take Senna into the wall. He just controls that beautifully, illustrating the terrible, terrible conditions. But what skill is required, what accuracy, what precision is required from a Grand Prix driver in this, the ultimate test. It has to be on a street circuit, low grip factor, and Mansell has got ahead of Gerhard Berger, so the Austrian must have had a moment somewhere. He had an upset stomach last night. He wasn't feeling that good, although he looked relaxed on the grid a little while ago. Senna proving the point here in 91. Mansell still keeping up the challenge though, as that Renault V10 propels him down the straight. And there is Piquet spinning across the top of the curb, and that's leading onto the Brabham straight. And the mechanics are feeling miserable, looking miserable. The rain still coming down, unrelenting. Now Mansell closing in a little bit on Ayrton Senna. So Mansell closing in quite a lot now. I don't know how he can see. He must just be looking for the red light on the tail of Ayrton Senna. Can Senna see that he's been challenged? He's probably been told by the pits. Mansell looking down the inside, pulling alongside, and there's wreckage all over the track. What a desperate situation. That was dramatic. Mansell had pulled out to try and see and feel his way past Ayrton Senna, and there's a crash on the straight. It looked like Alesi and Schumacher, certainly one of the Lamborghinis in the back there. I suspect it was Larini. Mansell has dropped back, understandably. There's Pierluigi Martini down the straight in the mist, and he has lost it. All that water gathering like a swimming pool. I think he just aquaplaned straight into the wall. Behind him, Alex Caffey just managed to avoid him, but on a day like today, who can blame Alesi for feeling glum? Who can blame him for having an accident? Even the world's best are going off like flies. Michael Schumacher explaining his predicament graphically to his engineer there. Look at the mist. Senna still going on, but conditions are now worsening. And someone has spun. I think that's Mansell, has lost his second place as Senna carries on in the lead of the Australian Grand Prix. Conditions have to be absolutely dismal. There is Mansell in the wall, and he's still in the cockpit, I think. Red light glowing, the marshals are going to him, and Senna says enough. Stop this race immediately. Conditions are far too bad. They're going to do it. The red flag is now out. And Berger must have gone off somewhere. He's walking away from his McLaren. Let's see what happened. Yeah, Berger loses it. You can see how easy it is now to aquaplane. Look at the rivulets of water. And straight off goes Berger as Nigel Mansell walks back to the pits. It's obvious that he's in pain, while Patrick Head discusses the situation with Patrese.
If the race should be restarted, then your car is, we've repaired it, the front wing. Yeah, it's just somebody's front wing underneath the front. Yeah, there's a new nose and front wing going on, and then that wing coming off. I know you had it for 2 laps or something. I'm more.
Nigel, what happened? You're limping pretty badly.
Everything was okay other than it was a complete joke. I mean, there was debris all over the place, and I don't know whether I got a puncture or whether I ran over something, but the car just instantly went out of control. It might aquaplane, but you know, I've been through the corner in Senna's tracks time and time again. Television will show, and he just threw me straight into the wall, left hand, and he was a big hit.
The conditions are ludicrous.
Well, I'm speechless because, you know, there's a truck down the straight, there's 4 cars down the straight. The race should have, they had 10 laps to stop the race when the accident happened. There's debris all over the place. I mean, people getting punctures. I mean, I just don't know. And I mean, I've hurt myself. I mean, my foot is really bad now, and I got a headache like there's no tomorrow. So I probably had a little bit of concussion. But I mean, I can't say anymore. I just don't understand.
2 more 10-minute delaying intervals. Wait 10 minutes. If it's cleared up, we then do a 10-minute restart. If it's still raining, we'll wait another 10 minutes. If it's still raining after 20 minutes and we cannot restart, the race will be stopped, will be finished, will be half points.
Gerhard Berger discussed his gearbox problems with the McLaren engineers. Even though he had just set fastest lap before the race was stopped, he would have been forced to retire in any case. Meanwhile, out on the grid, the mechanics and various team personnel huddled in the rain in the event that the clerk of the course decided that the race could continue. Team managers had a look at the rule book. Some were in favour of restarting, most, though, were against it.
Bandiera rossa anche qui.
No, perché? C'è una situazione... Bandiera rossa, la differenza...
Appunto, allora non andavo a fermarla prima.
Ma fermato per massa, non ha bloccato in macchina, mica per la pioggia.
Perché prima non la decisione.
Dovevano fermarla quando c'era in mezzo al rettitivo, ma non fermarla.
Però dico, da allora adesso cosa è cambiato?
Credo che prima devono fare più
Once again, a 10-minute sign was held up, and yet another delay.
Should the race be restarted, do you think?
Yes, of course.
It's obviously too wet to race, so I don't think anyone disputes that. I think the stewards and the clerk of the course are following the exact correct procedure, delaying at 10-minute intervals, but with the rain seemingly well set in, I think inevitably they're going to have to call the red flag the end of the race. It'll be a half-point situation, and positions will be 1 lap prior to the red flag, I believe.
In which case you've won the Constructors' Championship.
I think it doesn't really matter whether they start or don't start the race. We've won the Constructors' Championship because Williams needed to win. But I think we did a reasonable job this year. We were leading this race as well, and you win and lose World Championships in 16 races, not 1. It would have just been nice to have a better show at the end.
On the grid, it was time out for coffee, but it was only a matter of time before the race was cancelled. Michael Schumacher's race, though, was already over.
Yeah, a couple of spins I had on the straight. Actually, I want to pass Nelson on the left side. In this moment, he go also to the left side. I go to the right side. In this moment, I get a wheel spin, aquaplaning. I go to a little bit sideways. But it was not a problem, I could handle it. But in this moment, Alesi, he want to pass me and he touched my front wheel, and then we spun off both. I would say 3-4 times on the straight. It was happening in 6 gears. It was a funny situation. Yeah, that's it. It was finish of the race.
Okay, but what's your opinion on this these kind of conditions? Should not the drivers be consulted as to whether or not to race in this?
I mean, they cancelled the race because of the condition, and I think they shouldn't restart the race because it's still the same condition.
Finally, the inevitable came. Race director Roland Brunserada pulled out the red flag and stopped the 1991 Australian Grand Prix from continuing.
Ayrton Senna celebrating his first ever win in Australia, although he was the first to admit he'd have preferred to do it in proper race conditions. Missing from the podium, Nigel Mansell, already departed for the airport after incurring ankle and head injuries in the incident on the track. Confirmation of the final results. Senna first, Mansell second.
To show that we could try to race, but we just cannot. You know, everyone is just going off, and you cannot even go in third gear on the main straight. And this is just too dangerous. I think somebody's going to get badly hurt if someone is not already hurt after those shunts. And we got to really take in consideration for once our lives. You know.